The federal government is reportedly considering a gas tax to take the heat out of energy prices. The Prime Minister says it's not the government's preference, but it is working through the issues constructively. Joining me is LNP Senator Matt Canavan. Matt, thanks for your time. Energy bills are going through the roof. Do we need to do something like this to relieve cost of living issues?
When you tax something, it's very, very simple. When you tax something, it becomes more expensive. And if we're going to tax our major sources of energy, then energy costs will go up. They'll go up straight away because this will be priced in. They'll be priced in the future that there's higher risk here now, that any time a tax could be put in place. And so it doesn't matter what they do with the money. This is going to mean your power bills go up by even more. Now, what we need as a country is to encourage more supply, more reliable supply of energy. This government is completely floundering because they promised to bring down your power bills by $275 a year. They walked away from that within weeks. Their budget was a complete flop a few weeks ago, and it just showed that your power bills are actually going up by 56%. And now they're flying more kites than you see at the beach on a windy day. Every new day, there's a new plan to bring down your energy costs. There's gas price caps, there's reservation policies. And now apparently, we've ended up where the Labor Party always does by putting a new tax on the things that create wealth in our nation.
Is it fair, though, that gas companies are making record profits while consumers are paying record bills?
Well, what we need, the solution to higher prices is more supply. Get more supply going. Get that Narrabri gas project going. Increase supply. That will bring prices down. Taxes won't do it. That'll just increase costs in the supply chain. And now keep in mind here, this is going to be worse than Kevin Rudd's super profits tax. It is super profits tax 2.0, the mining tax 2.0. But like most sequels, it will be even worse because at least in Kevin Rudd's plan, when the companies lost money, they got, or notionally they were going to get subsidised by the taxpayer. They're only going to get taxed for their super profits. This one, they're just going to tax when prices change, when profits increase. We have a free market, people make investments. They're going to take your profits off you, but of course they won't be there if these companies go bankrupt. I mean, just a couple of years ago, Matt, the gas industry was on its knees in this country. Oil prices had gone negative for a brief period. They were very low during COVID. And so to turn around a few years later and just put massive new taxes on the industry is not going to attract investment. We're going to lose this golden goose that lays eggs for our country. We are very prosperous. We are very lucky to have a strong resources sector. It keeps our Australian dollar high, keeps the cost of living down. It creates a lot of job opportunities for young people. But if they mess around with these tax settings, we can kiss that golden goose goodbye.
Isn't it more of a state and territory government issue when it comes to supply? It's the New South Wales government standing in the way, is it not, of Narrabri? It was the Northern Territory government here that put a moratorium in place that held up development of the Beetaloo Basin. It's not really the federal government's fault, is it?
Well, there's no doubt that the state governments, especially, as you say, New South Wales, Victoria, for a while there, Northern Territory, have been the laggards here and have contributed a lot to this crisis. I mean, it is the federal government that promised to lower your power bills, though. They did that before the election, knowing all of these things. This is the federal government. The budget last week cut more than $50 million of funding to develop new gas fields. And again, if you want to bring down gas prices, develop new gas fields. But your point about state and territories is very important here. So the way apparently this tax will work is that, of course, the gas producers in Western Australia, which produce more than half of our nation's gas, will get taxed, even though there's not an energy price crisis in Western Australia. They've got a reservation policy. They've developed their resources. They've done everything right. Now, I would like to know what Mark McGowan thinks about his mates in the Federal Labor Party taxing Western Australian industry, Western Australian jobs to bail out states in the east. I would like to know what the people of Perth, who effectively elected this government, they've only got a one-seat majority, this Labor Party, and they got it thanks to the suburbs of Perth voting for them. And now they're going to turn around within 6 months and metaphorically stab those voters in the back here in Perth, because this will hit Western Australia. This tax will hit it massively. It'll reduce investment. It'll take away those jobs in Western Australia. And so they won't even get the benefit of it because they don't have an energy price crisis.
Well, I think Mark McGowan's made his position on some of those issues pretty clear already. But on that domestic reservation policy, obviously that's been hugely beneficial to Western Australia. Is that something that should be happening in every state and territory?
Well, there's no doubt it should happen. In fact, one of the very last things I did as Resources Minister was take successfully through Cabinet a policy that for all new gas fields we would have a reservation policy in this country, in Australia, for all areas. We should have done that for the Queensland coal seam gas areas over a decade ago. Obviously, we didn't, and so we've got to deal with the world we have. Retrospectively doing it is very difficult because people have made investments. They were the ones who built these areas where the rules were set, and if you change the rules mid-game, you will have an impact on the wealth of future Australians. We've got to take that into account. But we do have a system where we can stop gas exports from going overseas if there are shortages here in Australia. It took a while, but the federal government has finally activated that to supply more gas in Australia next year. We should make sure that Australians have first access to gas. But the basic problem in southern Australia, in New South Wales and Victoria, where a lot of our manufacturing industries are, is that they are not developing their gas resources anymore. So even the gas from Queensland, even the gas that might come from Northern Territory is very, very costly because it costs a lot of money to transport that far south.
Just in terms of the price of gas and the supply of gas and the prices on the East Coast, is it not the global market that's dictating this cost? And even if there is more supply of gas, might those gas companies rather want to send that gas overseas rather than leave it here? I know you're talking about a gas reservation policy, but it's going to be in their interest, is it not, to send it overseas where the prices are good?
Well, the gas market's actually not really a global one. There are very large price divergences right across the world. So in Asia over the last year, they've typically been paying around $40 a gigajoule for gas, whereas in the United States, the price has been under $10, in fact, normally around $6 a gigajoule, a massive difference. Likewise here, our prices have typically been around $10 to $15 gigajoule. They did spike just after the war in Ukraine, but they've settled back down at around that $15 gigajoule level. So we are paying, thanks to our domestic coal seam gas industry here in Australia and the Cooper Basin and what's left of the Bass Strait, thanks to those domestic fields, we're paying about a third for gas of what they are in Asia. So domestic production can make a big difference because it costs a lot to transport gas overseas, and there are bottlenecks, there are constraints. There's only so many LNG terminals around Australia, and so if we were to develop, say, the Narrabri gas fields, say to develop, not cut the funding from the Cooper Basin that this government, the Labor government has, not all that gas could go overseas. It would be constrained. And what's left there would, of course, be for Australians and help push down prices for Australian manufacturers and households.